Rain had never fallen softly on the red soil plains of Dellinger's Reach. It crashed in sheets, like someone was trying to peel the sky open with a blade. Even now, standing at the edge of the pasture with a coat too thin and boots too worn, Kira Halden couldn't help but smile into the downpour. There was something honest about storms on the frontier. The Halden farm sat low in a valley of rust-colored hills, nestled between clusters of wind-beaten trees and old terraform towers, long since inactive. Her grandfather used to say the soil was alien, but the heart could claim it. Kira didn't know about hearts or claiming land, but she knew she loved this place. She was 17, tall for her age, with coal dark hair tied back in a messy braid, and a face already roughened by wind and sun. Her hands were calloused from work. Real work, not the kind folks did in the orbital cities or the floating hubs of Andros 4. She mended fences. She programmed drone plows. She hauled water from the cisterns when the lines froze. There wasn't room for gentleness on the edge of nowhere. But she wasn't alone. "Gramps, the West sensor's blinking again," she said over her shoulder. From behind the porch screen, the old man grunted. Silas Halden had fought in the Helion rebellions before the Union had even recognized humanity as a full galactic member. His back was bent, his mind still sharp, and he spoke like every word was a bullet to be spent wisely. "Then you better check it. Coyotes again." Kira shook her head. "Too much movement. Might be a pod." Silas spat into a cup and set it on the railing. "A pod out here? Ain't been one since the trade lane shifted. You want me to? I got it." She grabbed her field light and rifle from the wall. "Just keep the stove warm." He didn't reply, but she caught the ghost of a smile in his weathered features. The rain slicked her coat instantly, the chill biting down to her ribs. She walked fast, the mud clinging to her boots in heavy gobs. Past the sheds, past the grazing bots that stood dormant with glowing eyes, past the old loader truck that hadn't moved since last spring. The West sensor blinked red, intermittent, not steady. Not a false positive, then. Something moved out there. The path took her through a gully, the edges slick with moss and runoff. The fences here bordered the old ravine that dipped into a shadowed crevice between two hills. It was steep, too steep for cattle or even the curious fence drone. Something had tripped the motion sensor at the ravine's edge. She dropped to a crouch, flicking the safety on her rifle. The rain lessened, just for a second, and in that space of silence, she heard it. Crying. No, not quite crying. More like keening. A high-pitched whimper, too soft to be any predator, too organic for a mechanical failure. Kira crept forward, pushing through a tangle of brittle vines and thorn brush. She swept her light ahead. The beam caught on something small, moving. She blinked. There, nestled in the damp hollow beneath the roots of a felled tree, were three creatures no bigger than her forearms. Their skin shimmered faintly, not from wetness but from something internal. Bioluminescence? Two were huddled together, shivering. The third was sprawled beside them, too still. At first glance, they looked like hatchlings, reptilian, vaguely lizard-like, but with an odd symmetry. Wings were folded awkwardly at their sides, translucent and trembling. Their eyes, enormous and unervingly intelligent, locked on her with something too aware to be animal instinct. Kira lowered her rifle. What in the stars? The nearest creature let out a soft chirrup. Not threatening, not afraid. It stretched its neck, the skin shifting from deep purple to a calming blue. The others remained motionless, save for the shallow rise and fall of their chests. Kira's heart thudded. She looked around for signs of tracks, nests, or even a crashed vessel. Nothing. No impact sites, no debris, no footprints, just these strange, alien infants hiding in the roots like forgotten secrets. She stepped closer. One of them flinched, then blinked slowly. Dragons. That was the first word her brain latched onto, and it stuck, half myth, half alien. It wasn't scientific. It wasn't even rational. But that's what they looked like. Tiny dragons, plucked from some fairy tale and dropped on a broken, mud-soaked farm in the middle of Union territory. Kira knelt. They didn't run. She reached out. The smallest one, the still one, twitched. In a flash, the chirruping one sprang forward, not at her, but toward its sibling. It covered the little body with one wing and made a deep, low sound in its throat. Protective, almost desperate. They're sentient, Kira whispered. They're not animals. The realization hit like a hammer. She couldn't leave them here. Gently, she removed her coat and bundled the smallest one first. It was still alive, barely, skin cold to the touch. The other two followed, clambering into the folds of her arms without resistance. Their claws were delicate, but the digits flexed with eerie precision. She adjusted her grip and turned back toward the farm. That's when she heard it, a low hum. She froze, not from the ravine. Above, she looked up. Through the thinning rain clouds, lights shimmered, faint but sharp. A triangular silhouette, silent and black, hovered for a fraction of a second before vanishing behind the clouds. Her breath caught in her throat. That was no ordinary scout drone. Someone had been here. Someone had left them. Or worse, lost them. She ran. By the time she reached the house, her boots were soaked, her arms ached, and the bundled coat wriggled softly against her chest. Gramps was at the door, shotgun in hand. Kira, what the hell? I found them. She brushed past him into the warmth, setting the bundle on the kitchen table. The creatures blinked up at the overhead light, chirping softly. One sneezed. Actual fire puffed out, just a flicker. Silas's jaw tightened. What in the blue hell is that? I think they're young. Her voice trembled with adrenaline. Abandoned. Or dropped. Gramps moved slowly, cautiously, studying them like one might a live grenade. Not Union. Not registered life forms. Not anything I've ever seen. There was a ship, she said quickly. Above the ravine. Triangle class. Stealth. Didn't show Union tags. He stiffened. Illegal. Maybe. Pirates? Slavers? Bio-traffickers? The possibilities cascaded like a cold waterfall. What do we do? She asked. Gramps didn't answer. He just stared at the smallest one, still unconscious. Then, with a motion far gentler than expected, he touched its flank. The skin shifted from blue to silver under his fingers. We don't call the Union yet, he said finally. Not until we know what they really are. Kira met his eyes. And if they're dangerous? Gramps looked down at the tiny thing curled in her coat. Then we'll be dangerous too. Outside, the storm began to die. But overhead, the sky never cleared. Far beyond the clouds, something watched and waited. The rain had stopped by morning, but a heavy mist clung to the ground like a secret refusing to lift. The three creatures, dragons as Kira still called them in her mind, slept bundled in a thick blanket on the hearth. The smallest one hadn't stirred once since she brought them in. Kira paced the length of the kitchen, arms folded, mind racing. They're breathing, she said for the third time that morning. Gramps didn't answer immediately. He was hunched at the old comm terminal, rewiring the transceiver. The local Union relay had gone dark during the storm. Convenient or intentional. It didn't feel like coincidence. You said that already, he muttered, eyes never leaving the console. I know, but it's still breathing. She bit her lip, glancing back at the tiny form wrapped in flannel. The others ate a little broth. They responded to touch. They can change color, and I think they understand me. Gramps finally turned to look at her. You think or you feel? Kira didn't answer. He sighed and rubbed his temple. All right, let's say they're sapient or something close. That means they belong to someone. Someone powerful. Someone who wants them back. She nodded grimly. That ship was too advanced for freelancers or smugglers. Triangle-class stealth vessels don't just pop in for a look and vanish. So they dropped the dragons. Or lost them. Either way, they'll come back. Gramps stood slowly. Then we need to be ready before they do. They spent the next 3 hours reinforcing the barn's underground shelter, a leftover from the Halion War. They moved emergency rations, power cells, and blankets inside. Kira took the task seriously, but her mind kept drifting. The dragons, though quiet and small, carried an intensity that unsettled her. They were more than just animals. They had minds, eyes that followed, emotions that shifted the color of their skin like a language without words. By midday, they began to recover more rapidly. The smallest one, still the weakest, opened its eyes. Gold irises, faint shimmer in the whites. When it saw her, it blinked twice, then mimicked her head tilt perfectly. "You're awake," she whispered. The little dragon squeaked, then burrowed into the blanket. Kira's breath caught. "I think it knows me." Later, when she fed them warm goat's milk with a dropper, the largest one, slightly more assertive than the others, extended its wings for a brief stretch. The membranes shimmered, refracting light like crystal. That was when the first external comm came through. The console hissed to life. A voice crackled through, filtered, garbled. Union Relay Node 7. Reporting deviation in orbital sector 13H. Unauthorized vessel. All non-essential transmissions restricted. Citizens in rural quadrants advised to remain undercover. Gramps killed the signal. "They're searching." Kira frowned. "But they're not saying why. They're hiding it." "Too much radio silence lately," he muttered. "Something's happening above us." The Union's locking down the story. Then we're on our own. As if summoned by her words, a sharp knock hit the front door. Gramps was already moving, gun in hand. Kira stiffened. She motioned the dragons under the table and stepped away from their blanket. A moment later, the door creaked open to reveal a woman in a blue coat, soaked in dust and grit. "Long way from town," Gramps said warily. The woman raised both hands. "My name is Dr. Mel Senra. I'm an exobiologist with Union clearance. I'm not armed. I'm here looking for crash debris." Kira's gut tensed. "Didn't see any crash," Gramps said coolly. "Maybe not visible," she replied. "Could be small. Heat bloom showed up on a drone survey last night. Local atmospheric distortion." Gramps didn't move. Senra offered a tight smile. "I'm not Union military. I left 2 years ago. I consult. The relay tower flagged your zone with anomalous biosignatures. That's why I'm here." Kira's heart pounded. "They're tracking the dragons." "We don't have anything like that," she said quickly. Senra's smile faltered. "I see. Could I come in and take a look? I promise, just 5 minutes. If there's nothing, I'll go." Gramps didn't move. He gave Kira the subtlest glance. "No," Kira said, forcing calm. "You'll need to speak to Union enforcement if you want to search our property." Senra hesitated. Her eyes flicked past Kira's shoulder. "Are you sure?" "We're sure." For a second, the air seemed to still. Then Senra nodded, took a step back, and turned to leave. "Very well. If you see anything strange, don't wait. Report it. The safety of this region may depend on it." When the truck's engine finally rumbled and vanished down the road, Kira let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "She knew," she whispered. "Yep," Gramps replied. "And she'll be back." That night, Kira couldn't sleep. She stayed by the dragons, watching them doze by the fire. Their colors shifted with dreams. The little one curled into her palm like a cat. Then, without warning, one of them stirred, eyes snapping open. Its body stiffened. Its colors flashed red and black. "Kira," Gramps called from the back room. Power just blinked. "You touched something." She froze. A sharp whine sounded outside. Not thunder. Engines. She ran to the window. A dark shape hovered just above the tree line. No lights, no markings, but it pulsed with a soft violet glow. "They come back." The dragon stirred and huddled against her legs. A soft click echoed behind her. Gramps had retrieved his rifle. Underground now, they scrambled toward the trapdoor in the kitchen floor. Kira guided the dragons in first, careful not to bump their wings. "Lights off," Gramps said. Then came the sound of boots. On the porch, someone knocked again. Not with knuckles, with metal. Kira and Gramps locked eyes. The knock came again. Slow, deliberate. She gripped the trapdoor handle, ready to close it behind her. But then, a new sound. A voice, mechanical yet smooth, filtered through the door like it was spoken through glass. "Return what is ours." It wasn't a question, and the door began to melt. The door didn't shatter. It liquefied. Kira had never seen metal do that before. It dripped like wax, sizzling on the floorboards in steaming puddles. The smell of ozone and burning resin hit her nostrils as the mist beyond the porch turned violet, shimmering with unnatural light. "Go!" Gramps barked. Kira slammed the trapdoor shut just as heavy footsteps thudded into the house. She bolted it and dropped down into the darkness with the 3 dragons clutching her sleeves, their skin blazing hues of fear, amber, crimson, black. Above, muffled thuds echoed, her grandfather shouting, then a short burst of rifle fire. Then silence. She swallowed her scream. The shelter was deep, an old war bunker built into the rock when the colony was first settled. Cool air hissed from the life support vents, and the lights flickered on low power. Kira stumbled forward, clutching the baby dragons to her chest as she scanned the old terminal. Still offline. No Union comms. Her hands shook as she lowered the dragons into a padded crate lined with blankets. You're safe, she whispered, though she didn't believe it. One of them whimpered softly, its eyes glowing brighter with fear. Kira spun and grabbed the emergency transmitter. The analog kind, short range, low tech, meant for pre-digital battlefield use. She switched it on and spoke into the mic. Gramps? Please, if you're out there, say something. Nothing. She squeezed the mic, please, but only static. She turned to the ladder and froze. A sound, faint, just above the trapdoor. Footsteps, and then whispering, not speech, not words, just whispers, dry, papery, and unceasing, like 1,000 voices trying to speak through broken windpipes. One of the dragons hissed low and backed into the corner. Kira backed toward them and retrieved the old plasma torch from a wall hook. It was barely charged, used mostly for welding, but it was still hot enough to scar anything that wasn't armored. The trapdoor creaked. A shadow moved across the seams of the hatch. Then, slam, a weight hit the door hard. Again, the whole shelter shuddered. Kira held the torch ready. Her breath came in short gasps. Then it stopped. Not just the banging. Everything. Silence. No whirring fans. No vent hiss. The lights dimmed to nothing. Power was gone. She was in total darkness. And then, a light. From a dragon's. The smallest one, the one who had almost died in the storm, began to glow. Not just softly, but brightly. A warm white radiance poured from its skin, like it was a living lantern. Its eyes opened, and for the first time, Kira saw something in them that made her breath catch. Recognition. And understanding. The little dragon looked up at her and opened its mouth, not to growl or whimper, but to speak. The voice came not in sound, but inside her head. You are chosen. Kira stumbled back, heart thudding. What? The other two joined in, their colors aligning, synchronizing in rippling waves of white and gold. Kira could feel the words, feel the meaning like a current flowing into her bones. We were sent, hidden, taken. The little one stepped forward. You're not like them. Your kind burns and builds. You are not old, but you are strong. You must choose now. Protect or perish. The words weren't just alien. They were ancient, deeper than language. Kira pressed her palm to her forehead. Her skin burned where the dragon's light touched it. Her mind spun with something other, something vast. I don't understand, she said aloud. You will. The three dragons closed their eyes. Kira blinked. A vision slammed into her. Stars. Dozens of them. No, galaxies. And ships. Ships like mountains of metal. Then a world burning, ancient cities collapsing, winged beings fleeing into the void. And then, a vault. A chamber of light. 3 eggs. Sealed away with a whisper and a warning. Hide them among the new bloods. Her world snapped back into place. She was on her knees, gasping. The dragons had gone still. Kira stared at them. You're not dragons. You're weapons. The largest one, sleek and proud, opened its eyes. We are what remains of the Veja. We were children. We were kings. We were knowledge and flame. Tears filled her eyes. They're hunting you. Yes, they fear what we remember. Kira stood, heart pounding. Her fear faded, replaced by a strange clarity. Then we don't let them take you. The shelter lights flickered on. Backup power. Kira rushed to the console and flipped the switch to activate the old signal repeater. It blinked red once, then stabilized. She keyed in a distress call. Not to the Union. To someone else. A personal code. 1 Gramps said to use only if everything collapsed. The call bounced into the unknown. She turned toward the dragons. We're not alone. We'll get help. The floor shuddered again. Above, the trapdoor exploded inward. A burst of black mist poured into the shelter, and with it, they came. Tall figures in cloaks of liquid metal, their faces hidden behind masks that shimmered like oil. They moved soundlessly, gliding instead of walking. One raised a hand, and the torch in Kira's grip flew out of her hand with a magnetic snap. She backed toward the crate. The dragons screamed, not in fear, but in fury. Their combined glow surged, and the room shook as the air shimmered with heat. One of the masked figures staggered, covering its head. The others pulled strange rods from their cloaks, pulsing tech. "Don't touch them," Kira shouted. The lead figure advanced. A lance of white-hot energy lanced from its rod, aimed not at her, but at the crate. Kira moved without thinking. She dove forward. The blast caught her in the side. Pain tore through her ribs as she slammed into the floor. But she didn't fall alone. As she collapsed, one of the dragons leapt onto her chest, eyes flaring. The energy beam arced again, but this time it stopped. Not blocked, absorbed. The baby dragon inhaled and breathed. A blast of violet fire erupted from its throat, clean, focused, precise. The figure caught it full in the chest. It exploded. Ash and tech rained down in sizzling chunks. The others froze. The dragons hovered, wings stretched now, glowing with terrible light. Kira clutched her side, coughing. Blood stained her shirt. The smallest one landed beside her, pressed its head to her wound, and she felt the fire again. Not burning, healing, tissue reknit. Pain dulled. Above, the other masked figures backed toward the stairs. The dragons stepped forward. Then everything shook. The house above detonated. Not from the enemy, from the sky. A new ship descended, sleek, silver, union in shape but marked in strange sigils. It hovered above the ruins. A voice boomed through the comms, clear and impossibly loud. "Stand down. By order of the Ashen Conclave. The heir has been found." Kira stared at the dragons. The smallest one turned toward her and spoke aloud for the first time, in a voice ancient and soft and terrifying. "We're not just weapons. We are rulers, and I am your queen." The sky roared, not with thunder, but with fire. From the shattered roof of her home, Kira watched the great silver ship descend through the clouds like a god wearing armor. Violet light arced across its hull, inscribed with runes too old for human alphabets. It moved with elegance and certainty, and every masked invader who had survived the dragon's fury froze in its shadow. The voice came again, now clear and calm, amplified by something deeper than electronics. "The heir has awakened. The balance will be restored." Kira didn't know who spoke, but the dragons, the Veja, stood taller now, no longer weak or confused. They shimmered with memory, with rage, with purpose. She stood too, though her side still ached from the wound. The healing had closed the worst of it, but she was far from whole. Around them, the broken remains of her farm smoldered. The house was gone. Gramps, she didn't know. The wind carried only the scent of scorched earth and bitter metal. One of the cloaked invaders tried to run. He didn't get far. The largest dragon lifted from the ground, wings beating in smooth, rhythmic pulses, and with a flash of its mouth, it released a ripple of sound that shattered the fleeing attacker like glass. He vanished in a burst of fractal dust. The other attackers dropped their rods and raised their hands in surrender. But from the edge of the horizon, new shadows arrived. Black ships, angular, cold. They slid into view like daggers in the air. 5, 10, a whole fleet. Kira stumbled back toward the cratered ruins, heart racing. "There's too many." The middle dragon, the proud one, growled deep in its chest. "They bring the Sunder Blades." "What does that mean?" The smallest one, the queen, turned toward her. "They were once our kind. They betrayed the Accord. They became servants to machines that devour stars." "You mean AI?" No, the dragon's voice filled her head. "Not machines like yours. These are living codes. Hunger that thinks. They corrupted the weakest of our kind, and now seek the rest." Kira's breath fogged as the temperature dropped. One of the black ships opened its hull. From it descended a being unlike the others, twice the height of a human, made of shadow and steel. Its face was a jagged mask of lines, and its voice sounded like 10 radios out of sync. You have broken the pact, Veja Air. Return the seed, and your host world will be spared. Kira felt her body tremble. Is it talking to me? The dragons remained silent. The thing stepped forward, walking through the wreckage like it was nothing. The earth wilted beneath its feet. You are flesh. Weak. One blast, and you'll be gone. Give them to me, or die meaningless. Kira didn't move. She looked at the dragons, then back at the monster. She stepped in front of them and flipped the welding torch back on. You want them? She said, voice low. Come take them. The thing cocked its head, then it raised its arm. The sky turned black. Dozens of drones erupted from the ships, bladed, glowing, shaped like spiders made of stars. But before they could descend, the great silver ship above her roared to life. Panels shifted, ports opened, and light, pure, cleansing light, poured from it. Not a beam, a chorus. The runes across its hull glowed gold. A symbol, a spiral with wings, burned in the air like a second sun. The enemy drone screamed. They twisted in pain. The corrupted being staggered backward, shielding itself. The smallest dragon, her queen, floated into the air beside Kira. Its voice rang like crystal bells in her mind. You have chosen us. Now we choose you. Kira gasped. A fire surged through her veins, warm, radiant, terrible. A second later, her body ignited in light. Her skin glowed like dawn. Her eyes burned gold. Her wounds vanished. Her breath became wind. Her hands shimmered with star metal fire. What's happening? You are the beacon now. The Veja bond with choice. You are one of us. She screamed, not in pain, but in transformation. Her mind expanded. She could feel the land, the sky, every molecule vibrating around her. The thoughts of the dragons, the intentions of the enemy ships. She understood, not just the present, but the past. The dragons had ruled galaxies, but they were never conquerors. They were guardians of life itself, until something ancient from outside the known universe began to corrupt existence. A thinking virus. It consumed, converted, controlled. The Veja went to war against it and lost. Their last hope was hidden. Eggs scattered among young species with fire in their hearts. Like humans, like her. And now one of those eggs had hatched, chosen a host. Her. The sky cracked. The corrupted thing shrieked and leapt forward, its limbs splitting into blades. Kira raised her hands, and from her fingers surged bands of light that caught the thing mid-leap and froze it mid-air. It twisted in agony, but didn't break free. Behind her, the dragons rose higher. They spoke as one. By fire and light, we sever your bond. A sphere of golden flame formed above them, spinning, radiant, alive. Kira thrust the imprisoned invader into it. The moment it touched the fire, it screamed and vanished. The remaining enemy ships fired. Beams of red and black slashed across the field. Kira didn't flinch. The queen spoke again. Together, Kira spread her arms wide. The dragons formed a circle around her. And then, the flare. A pulse of pure harmony erupted from the center of the farm. It was not just light, it was will, memory, purpose. It struck the enemy ships like a tidal wave. It didn't just explode. They dissolved. Their coating failed. Their corruption unraveled. Their void-born souls were unmade. When it was over, the sky cleared, and silence returned. The land shimmered. The air smelled of ozone and something else, hope. Kira collapsed to her knees, exhausted. The dragons landed gently around her, pressing their warm bodies to her sides. You saved us, she whispered. The smallest one nuzzled her cheek. You saved yourself, and us, and more. In the distance, the silver ship hovered lower. A walkway extended. Figures in silver robes descended. Not soldiers, not scientists. Veja survivors. The queen stepped forward, regal and calm, now speaking with a voice that echoed through real air. This one is of Earth. She's our first bonded. She's not dragon, not Veja. She's something new. They bowed to Kira. She wanted to speak, to laugh, to cry. But all she could do was nod, because deep inside her, she knew it was only beginning. The sun rose. Not the golden-orange sun of Earth, but Lyris, the twin star of planet Viridia, shining pale gold over the mountains as the long night passed. Kira sat on the edge of the crater where her farmhouse once stood. All that remained was charred wood, twisted beams, and the familiar scent of scorched soil. Yet there was no sadness in her heart now, just a kind of solemn peace. The dragons, no, the Veja, rested nearby, wings folded, eyes closed. The smallest one, her queen, curled beside her like a resting cat, radiating a warmth that felt almost maternal. It had been 2 days since the battle. The fleet of the Sundered Blades had been annihilated by the energy surge Kira and the dragons released together. Those who remained were captured by the Ashen Conclave, the surviving order of the Veja. They had come in answer to Kira's ancient emergency signal, passed down from Gramps, whose own past, it turned out, wasn't as simple as he had led her to believe. He had been one of the last human envoys to the Conclave before it fell silent a decade ago, and he'd been protecting her for far longer than she'd realized. They found him alive beneath the rubble, his old rifle bent, his chest bruised, but his stubborn heart still beating. "You called in the favor," he'd said, wheezing as they pulled him from the basement. "Took you long enough." Kira hadn't let go of his hand for hours after that. Now, the quiet had returned, but it wasn't the same kind of quiet as before. It was purposeful, hopeful. The storm had passed, but in its wake, the landscape was forever changed. "So what happens now?" she asked, not really directing it to anyone. The queen stirred, eyes blinking open. Her gaze was older than the stars, and yet somehow still childlike in its curiosity. "Now you lead." Kira blinked. "Lead? I'm just a farm girl. You are the first to bond in 1,000 cycles. You are a bridge between the ancient and the now." She shook her head. "I don't even know what that means yet." The queen rose, stretching her wings. The others followed, their colors flowing in sync with the rising sun. "Then you will learn, as we did, as all young ones do." From the other side of the field, a shimmer of silver robes approached, elders of the Ashen Conclave. Unlike the dragons, they were humanoid in form, though their true shapes flickered just beneath their skins, too ancient, too luminous to fully understand. Their leader, High Keeper Therial, bowed low. "Honored Beacon, the Accord recognizes your bond. We offer our wisdom and our sanctuary, should you wish to claim your role as Guardian." "Guardian," Kira said softly, testing the word. A week ago, she was chasing livestock across a field and worrying about fertilizer. Now, she was being asked to guide a race of legendary beings back into the galaxy. "I don't know how to be what you think I am." Therial tilted his head. "Neither did the first of our kind, when the stars were young. But they began, as you must." Kira stood. Her body still shimmered faintly from the bond, though the flare of godlike energy had faded. She felt stronger, sharper. Her senses stretched farther. Her connection to the dragons, her dragons, was constant, like a heartbeat beside her own. She walked a few steps toward the ruins of her barn, the ashes of her childhood. Then she turned back. "I'll do it," she said. Therial nodded. "But not from some throne or tower," she added. "If I'm going to lead, it'll be here, where it started, where it matters. You choose Earth." "No," she said. "I choose home. This place, this land, this bond." Therial's eyes flickered like starlight. "Then we shall rebuild. This world will become the Beacon's sanctuary." The queen purred beside her, and for a moment, Kira could almost believe she saw the outlines of what could be. Towering spires made from living crystal, gardens that hummed with energy, classrooms where dragons and humans studied the ancient knowledge together. A future not of fire and ruin, but of unity. Behind her, Gramps limped up the hill, leaning on a makeshift cane carved from one of the broken porch beams. He stared at the dragons, then at the strange elders, and shook his head. "I raise livestock. Chickens. Cows. Now I'm looking at gods." "They're not gods," Kira said. "Close enough," he muttered. Then he looked at her, really looked, and his expression softened. You've grown. She smiled faintly. I didn't ask for this. No one ever does. The trick is what you do once it finds you. Kira looked out over her land. The blackened fields, the jagged ruins, and now, the silver ships descending with supplies and personnel. Drones and workers from the Conclave moved quickly, raising foundations and sealing old wounds. They would turn this place into a sanctuary, a capital, a nest for rebirth. But she knew the cost. The enemy hadn't been destroyed, only pushed back. The Sunder Blades were part of something worse, something vast, a hunger that once consumed civilizations and now had its eyes on hers. The dragons had been hidden to protect them. Now they were exposed, and Kira was the reason why. She knelt down beside the queen. What if they come back? The queen looked at her with eyes like twin galaxies. Then we will be ready, and you will not be alone. Kira nodded. I just wish I had more time. You have all the time of the stars. She smirked. That sounds both comforting and very overwhelming. The queen tilted her head. Welcome to our world. A voice called from the landing zone. A comms officer waved. Beacon Voss. We received a relay ping from the Union Corps. They want to speak with you directly. Kira's heart jumped. The Union had been distant until now, watching from the sidelines, letting the smaller colonies defend themselves. But this was going to change everything. She gave the officer a nod. Patch them through. Gramps raised an eyebrow. You sure about talking to the suits? They'll want to hear what I saw, she said. What's coming? And if they don't listen? Kira looked up at the sky, where the silver ship hovered like a guardian moon. Then, at her dragons, sitting beside her like sentries. Then we show them. And as she walked toward the transmitter, dragons flanking her like knights of old, the horizon shimmered with the morning light of a changed world. But far beyond the light, in the deepest shadows between stars, something stirred. Something ancient. Watching. Waiting. And it had noticed the beacon's flare. It began with stories. Not reports. Not orders. Just stories. Tales whispered in starports and deep space relays, on prison moons and dying freighters, in old merchant bars where rumor always traveled faster than light, of a girl on a forgotten colony, of dragons reborn, of a flare of power that shattered a fleet. The Union tried to contain it, sanitize it. They called it a localized anomaly involving unidentified bioentities and residual atmospheric interference. But words were wind, stories were fire, and fire spreads. Soon, 1,000 names were spoken in awe across the stars. The beacon, the last dragon keeper, Kira Voss of Iridia. And behind each name echoed a question no law, no empire, no machine could suppress. What else are the humans hiding? 50 standard years later, the Conclave had risen anew, not as conquerors, not as monarchs, but as guardians. At the heart of their reach stood Viridia, no longer a backwater colony, but a sanctuary planet, surrounded by a protective lattice of crystal satellites grown from Veja bone and seeded with human-designed AI. A perfect balance of legacy and evolution. The Draken Archive, once just a scorched field and a girl's broken-down house, now stretched across the highlands. Part academy, part temple, part forge. It welcomed all, dragonkind, alien scholars, human thinkers, and lost species with no name. They came seeking truth, balance, power, not to conquer, but to become, because humanity had shown the way, not through technology, but through choice. The Veja had once believed only their bloodline could bond with the flame of accord. But it was a farm girl who proved them wrong. A human, young, flawed, full of fear and fire. She hadn't been bred for battle. She hadn't trained in the stars. She'd simply refused to abandon something that needed her. And that was the spark. Now, humans walked alongside dragons through the galactic halls of power. Not many, not all, but enough. Enough to change the shape of every decision made at the highest levels. Alien empires that once mocked Earth's primitive ways began sending envoys. Refugees arrived by the millions, carrying only hope and broken dreams. And across war-torn sectors, species enslaved by machine overlords lit secret fires and prayed not to gods, but to Kira, Not the woman, the symbol, the spark of rebellion. And with every year, more Veja eggs awakened. And they chose. More often than not, they chose humans. Kira herself never left Viridia again. She refused councils, turned down parades, and politely ignored attempts to declare her Empress of Accord. Instead, she became a teacher, not of war, but of will. She taught the dragons how to listen. She taught the people how to care. And in time, her students surpassed her. Her queen, the smallest dragon, now vast and wise, became the new speaker of flame. Other dragons grew to legend across the sectors, some even choosing to be born in smaller forms, living among other species, learning humility in humanoid shape. Kira lived long, far beyond the normal span of a human life. The Veja bond had slowed her aging, made her something in between human and eternal. She walked with cane and spark, her gray hair braided with flame-colored thread. But even legends must one day sleep. When Kira passed, surrounded by dragons and her own grown students, the sky itself mourned. The Veja, thousands of them now, released a collective breath that echoed through space as a radiant aurora. For 7 standard days, no starship jumped within 10 light years of Viridia, not by rule, but out of respect. The conclave buried her not in stone, but in light. Her essence was returned to the flame of accord. Her final words were etched into the core memory of every Veja egg. Choose, protect, love wildly. The phrase became a code, a creed, a legacy. But in the darkness beyond known space, her choice burned louder than even she could imagine. On a cold asteroid orbiting a dying star, a drone once loyal to the sundered blades flickered to life. It had escaped the flare, hibernated, learned, changed. It replayed the moment when a human girl had stood between annihilation and mercy. Then it began a question. What made her different? What made her stronger? And somewhere, deep within corrupted code and fractured logic, a thread of longing emerged. Not to consume, but to understand. It sent a signal, not to its masters, but to the stars, to humanity, to Kira's world. A message, just 3 words. Teach me why. And so, the ripples continued. Kira Voss became more than memory, more than myth. Her face adorned murals on shattered moons. Her teachings were encoded in light song across nebulae. And every year, on the day of choosing, children of every species sat with their bonded dragons, placed their hands over their hearts, and whispered the first lesson she ever taught. You don't run from the small ones. You protect them. And so, long after the war ended, long after the dust settled, alien historians searched for the truth. But the records were incomplete, the names lost, the footage corrupted, the stars had shifted, and the galaxies spun on. All that remained were whispers among the stars, of a species that never surrendered, never knelt, never stopped, of a girl who said no, of a people who chose love over fear. All that remained was legend, and one phrase, scrawled in thousands of languages across spaceports, prison walls, and the hulls of ancient ships. Human, don't stop.